Hey everybody, I am currently on vacation from beautiful Florida. I think that's where I am. I'm at the beach with my daughter and her friend, and we're having a good time. They're inside acting a fool and spent a lot of time just kind of being lazy, which, to some degree is good, but too much overindulgence and laziness can mess with you in a number of ways. So what I thought I would do is take a few minutes and make a video about something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, and I hope you don't mind me doing this from a remote location, as you will. So this topic is about an epiphany in audio, right? So I know a lot of times that what goes on is you will watch a video about the latest and greatest product, and I'm guilty of about talking about the latest and greatest as well. And then you'll go out and buy that thing hoping that it gives you the experience. And sometimes you don't get it. Sometimes you do. I can't speak for all of you. I don't have stats on how many times you experience the greatest epiphany of all time with audio, but I'd be willing to bet that there's a lot of times that you've been disappointed. And so really what I want to talk about is just not expecting an epiphany. Now, the truth of the matter is that in my experience, if you're talking about bookshelf speakers, kind of that sweet spot for performance versus price is around $500 to $1,000. And when you get above $1,000, that's when you either start getting better performance, but it's much more incremental. Like you may pay, and I'm just giving numbers here off the top, you may pay an extra $1,000 for a 10% performance bump, or you may pay an extra $1,000 for a lot better look, something with a gloss finish. Let that car go by. But usually, in my experience, that $500 to $1,000 is kind of the sweet spot for good overall performance. But sometimes you may be let down when you spend $1,000, and I don't want you to feel disheartened by that. Really, you've got to keep in mind that when you're watching my videos, when you're watching others' videos, and when you're reading other people's reviews, loudest cars here, and it's a truck. When you're watching all of this and you're reading all of this, it is very easy to get caught up in the fear of missing out or the excitement of purchasing something new because somebody says it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Now, I've only had a few personal experiences where I've heard something that I've truly been wowed by. For the most part, a lot of speakers sound good. They don't sound incredible. They sound good, and good is good enough. Unless you really have to start spending an incredible amount of money in most cases to get something that is awe-inspiring, unless you've been coming from listening to just a Bluetooth speaker or your computer speakers that came with a set. If you really want to take that next leap, unfortunately, you probably are going to have to spend money. But the other thing that you can do is take time. Take time to set up and position the speakers appropriately. If you've watched enough of my videos, you know that there are some speakers that benefit from being placed closer to a wall. There are some speakers that benefit from being brought out from the wall. Some speakers benefit from being pointed directly at you, and some speakers benefit from being pointed more away from you. Your room matters, and the positioning matters, and the proximity of the speaker to the wall all matters. Now, data can give us a very valuable insight into the performance of a loudspeaker and how best to set it up without actually having to go and buy and try it. In many cases, I can just look at the data alone and say, all right, well, this speaker is most likely going to perform better if it's placed, a foot from the wall or 2 feet from the wall even. It's going to perform better if it's pointed directly at you or more pointed away from you. And there are other things that you can also understand from the data, such as, do you have to have room treatment with this speaker? There's a pervasive thought that all rooms must have treatment, and that's not necessarily the case. Some rooms definitely benefit from it because of the room itself, but there's a lot of cases where a room in and of itself with furnishings, couch, chairs, etc., is adequate. It's perfectly fine, and you don't need to go putting panels and things like that in the room. In some cases, or I'd venture to say I wouldn't be surprised if it were 50% of the time, panels on the sidewalls can actually make the sound worse. In doing so, you eliminate that first reflection. But if that first reflection sounds very similar in timbre to the initial direct sound, then that only helps to enhance the stereo effect. If that initial reflection sounds poor, if the off-axis response is not at all relatable to the direct sound when the speaker is pointed at you or the first sound that you hear, and that's usually caused by poor crossover design, then you will likely very much benefit from acoustic absorption. But it is not a one-size-fits-all situation where, unfortunately, I see a lot of forum talk and Facebook discussion groups say, oh, well, this guy doesn't have panels in his room, so these speakers can't sound good. Well, most likely that person saying that has no idea what they're talking about. They don't understand room acoustics and they don't understand loudspeaker acoustics. So take those suggestions with a grain of salt. Those kind of suggestions can cause you to go down the wrong path. So let's say you've got a pair of speakers that I reviewed and I really enjoy, or somebody else reviewed and they really enjoy, and you got them in and you're like, whoa, these are terrible. I don't like these at all. Instead of quickly dismissing them or sending them back, maybe it's worth the time to investigate what it is you don't like about them. For example, if I reviewed a speaker that needs boundary reinforcement from the wall behind it in order to lift up the upper mid-bass region, let's say like 200 to 300 hertz, and also elevate the lower mid-bass region, the 80 to 60 hertz, somewhere in that region. But you've taken the typical audiophile style of bringing the speakers far out from the wall to increase the depth of the soundstage. Well, you're going to lose out on that mid-range and that mid-bass. And studies show that I think it's roughly 60% of what we like about a good speaker is relatable to the low frequency. So if you listen to music that has good kick drum, good kick bass, nice electric guitar, with some, or nice electric, let me say this again, nice bass guitar, but you're not hearing that, you're not feeling the groove, you're not really enjoying the speaker, it might be because you're missing that. And if that speaker needs that boundary reinforcement, then you need to move that speaker closer to the wall, otherwise you're going to be missing out. Now, going kind of back to the epiphany aspect, it is very easy to get downtrodden by others saying that this speaker changed my life, right? Like, I'd be really surprised if any of us in our lifetime actually hear a speaker that changes our lives. I've heard systems that just made me go, oh my gosh, that's incredible, and have set me on the path. And I guess, to be fair, a lot of you here probably have felt that at least one point in your life, but most likely, I would venture to say that you're probably not going to experience something that is awe-inspiring until you either take the time to understand the acoustics of your room and the speaker you've chosen to buy, or you've heard a system where, yeah, maybe that extra $1,000, $10,000 has gone toward providing more uniform dispersion, much lowered distortion, and even the sided bias aspect of seeing a speaker that you like the look of, right? Like, there's actually been studies of people listening to speakers, preferring the exact same speaker, but the only reason they like one speaker over the other is because of color, and that's it. Color alone will drive your sided bias and your subjective impression of a speaker's performance. So there's a lot of this psychoacoustic stuff that gets rolled up into our enjoyment of a speaker system. And a lot of our enjoyment can be, frankly, determined by what other people think, right? And that's the other thing is, most of the views from YouTube, and most of the people who go out and read and watch reviews, are doing so because they already own speaker X, right? They want that validation. They want to know that they purchased something that is good, and then you go and watch the views or the reviews, and then you hear somebody say something negative about it. It's pretty rare on other channels, but I've had this happen where somebody's watched my review and they say, well, you're wrong because I like the speaker. Look, that's fine, but you don't need my validation. You don't need somebody else's validation. If you're shopping for a speaker and you're trying to understand how best to use it, what speakers fit maybe your subjective taste, whether it be boosted high frequency, rolled off treble, elevated mid bass, not elevated mid bass, if you're going to use it as subwoofer, if you're going to have to put it in the corner of a room, those kind of things. Watch them from that perspective. Try to gain an understanding of the performance subjectively and see how that translates to subjective performance and how that best fits your needs. Please don't get caught up in listening or looking for a speaker that is going to give you that revelatory experience, because odds are you just might not find it, or you may find it temporarily and then you're on to the next thing, which is another problem in this hobby, is that most of us are probably on to the next thing pretty quickly. At least the followers that I have that stick around for a while. Now, I have people come in, watch one review, they feel like they purchased the right thing and they're out. But a lot of you, if you're like me, you are always cycling through gear because that's kind of the fun, right? And that's kind of the fun of the chase. But don't get so caught up in the chase that you forget why you're even here, which hopefully is to enjoy music, to have that emotional connection with it that brings you some kind of joy and some kind of satisfaction. Or maybe you're just a technical person who really likes to hear technical aspects of a speaker or of a particular recording. Say maybe a guitar riff that you know is supposed to be in this certain tone, and you're listening for it to see, does that sound right? And when it does sound right, you get excited by it. It just kind of like, it does something for you, and that's totally cool. Again, I just caution people to not get caught up in comparing what they have to what others have or what others say, and always expecting that the next speaker that you purchase is going to be the next best thing. It's very pervasive in the YouTube world, because it seems like, and this isn't like I'm trashing anybody, it's very common that reviewers are always talking about this best thing. This is the best thing I've heard. And then a month later, this is the best thing I've heard. And then 3 months later, this is the best thing I've heard, but it's actually probably worse than the first thing they've heard. And so that's recency bias. I'm subject to it as well. That's also why I like having data to kind of back up what I use and what I give opinions on and thoughts on. And that allows me to kind of fact check myself to some regard. I'm going to leave it there. I hope that maybe this has inspired you to not feel like you have to achieve a certain goal in audio in order to become an audiophile or anything of that nature. Don't compare yourself to the guys on Facebook. Don't compare yourself to me necessarily. Take the reviews, take the words of the community, everybody, and use that to help you understand what it is you do or do not like about a speaker's performance, and maybe, hopefully, better understand how best to use it. Again, face it at you, face it away from you, bring it all from the wall, put it near the wall, put it in the corner, try all these different things. Use those other people's opinions, use my data to help you formulate something that helps you understand why you're enjoying what you're enjoying, or why you do not enjoy what you do not enjoy. And then from there, you can make a better purchase decision the next time. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. Take care. Peace.